Today on Stock Charts in Focus, we're optimizing your investable universe, showing you how to take the endless, vast, huge world of investable options, pick and choose the ones that are right for you, and actually build that into your scan. So when you're running those technical scans, coming up with new trade ideas or investment targets, instead of looking at everything out there, you're going to be looking at a smaller subset, a smaller group to keep you focused on a more manageable part of the investing world. We're also going to show you how to create your own unique, what we call a universe list. So we got lots to cover on the show today. Of course, you know what it is. It's all new. It's all here. It's Stock Charts in Focus. All right, my friends, welcome to the show, Stock Charts in Focus. Of course, our product focus show here on the channel where we dig into the site, dive into the tools, show you around the features, and help you get more value out of stock charts. That's our mission here every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time up on the live channel, also up on our YouTube channel after that, and the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. My name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. Wonderful to be back with you as always for another episode of Stock Charts in Focus. We've been having some fun the last couple of weeks. We dove into the sector summary tool, got some great feedback for that. Last week's episode, we talked about creating these very advanced, very powerful relative strength charts. Some of those tools have been kind of out of my own process, things that I actively use in my own approach to the markets. We're going to do a little bit of that again on today's show. We're going to have some fun showing you how to, as we said, kind of optimize your investable universe. Now, there's a soapbox that I've stood up on many times. If anyone has ever heard me give a lecture or speak at a conference or anything like that, one of the soapboxes that I love to get up on is about the investable universe that you have in front of us. So here's what I want you to think about at the start of today's show. As modern investors, as online investors, as mobile investors, now we got our brokerages in our pockets. We got things like stock charts in our pockets as well. We've got things like cryptocurrencies, Forex, stocks, ETFs, bonds. We've got NFTs. I mean, the universe of sort of investable options just continues to grow and grow and grow. I hear this feedback from a lot of people when they get sort of into investing, when they're starting out in the markets, right? They say, this is just overwhelming. I don't know where to start. There's so many things to think about. I don't even know what an ETF is, but apparently I'm supposed to look at those, and there are thousands of those in addition to the stocks. And now I've got cryptocurrencies and all these other things that I'm supposed to be looking at. It's huge and I'm overwhelmed. So what we want to do is limit that investable universe. It's tempting to think that we need to consider every single asset class out there, but in reality, if you can't trade a smaller group of names, if you can't trade 30, 50, 100 names, you're not going to have success trading 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 things. So what we're going to do with today's show, I'm going to show you how to narrow your universe. What we're fighting back against here is something called choice overload. If you've studied psychology at all or read any sort of psychology ideas, specifically behavioral finance and areas like that, there's a phenomenon called choice overload. Now, the idea behind choice overload actually kind of coined by a former professor of mine, Barry Schwartz, who's written one of my favorite investing books, by the way. It's not even an investing book, but The Paradox of Choice, where he talks about this phenomenon. One of the best and most applicable investing books that's not even an investing book. Definitely go pick up a copy of that. But anyways, choice overload. The idea here is that we think that choice is going to make us better off, right? We love to have a ton of options to consider. That's kind of sexy. It's kind of fun, right? To have endless numbers of options. But in reality, the more choice that we add to our plates, the harder it is to actually make a decision. Choice overloads us, makes things overwhelming, and actually starts to work against us. Investing is the perfect example of this. Again, we have so many thousands of things that we can invest in now. It really is overloading us. So we want to fight back against that as investors. We want to narrow our universe and keep things more manageable. Now, this can change over time, right? When you're new to investing, maybe you want to start with just a small group like the Dow. You might want to build that up over time. As you become a more accomplished investor, maybe you want to look at other asset classes, bring in different things. This sort of idea can evolve over time. But again, as a starting place to sort of figure out what your universe is going to be, narrow it down and actually build that into your process, that's what we're going to talk about on today's show. So specifically, we're going to do this with scanning. We're going to jump over to the scan workbench, show you how to build specific groups into your scans. This is something that I do with my scans. We're going to sort of build it up from the beginning. Then I'll show you how I've implemented that as well. And what we're also going to show you how to do is build what I call a universe list. So specifically for me, I'm primarily buying stocks and ETFs. So for stocks, I've limited my universe to the S&P 1500. That's kind of my primary focus. But for ETFs, I've also built up what I call my own ETF universe list. You can actually run your scans against a chart list in your account. And so you can sort of build up whatever your investable universe is going to be and run your scans against that chart list. So we'll show you how to do all of that on today's show. So that's kind of the background here. Let's jump over to the site. We're going to start right on the scan workbench. Let's get it going. All right, everyone, so we are here on the scan workbench, the advanced scan workbench. Of course, you can get here by logging into your account, go up to that menu in the top right corner, hit that Your Scans page. That's going to take you right to the scan workbench. Now, we're actually going to clear this out. This is kind of the default syntax. If you're not familiar with scanning, this is actually what loads in there just to start, just to give you a scan that you could theoretically run or start to customize. We're going to clear that out. And we are actually going to start by scrolling away from the scan criteria area down to the components area. So you can write your scans yourself. You can type in all of that syntax if you know what you're doing, but you can also use this scan components area to pick and choose different, basically building blocks for your scans. So if you want scooters over a certain value, or if you've got a specific predefined scan in mind, like 52-week highs, something like that, you can actually sort of scroll through these menus, browse through these menus, and use them to build your scans. We're going to do this to build our investable universe right into one of our scans. So we're going to come down here to the indexes and ETFs group. We're going to open this menu up. When you open that up, you've got a whole bunch of different options. Specifically, if we're talking about stocks, we've got the Dow groups, we've got the NASDAQ 100, we've got the S&P 500, 100, 400, and 600, also the Toronto 300, LSE, and NSE. So we've got a whole bunch of different sort of pre-built universes to choose from in this menu. Now, if you select any of these, that's going to put that syntax right up into your scan. But what it's going to be doing is saying the stock that we are going to find, the stock, the sort of group that we're going to scan has to be in this index. Very, very cool. And this is how we are going to start to limit our universe. So again, you might be a very accomplished investor. You might be brand new to investing. Let's say you're brand new to investing. Well, the Dow might be an amazing starting place for you. If you're struggling because the markets feel overwhelming, there's so many options out there. Starting with just the 30 stocks in the traditional Dow Jones Industrial Average is a great place to start. If you can't find success picking and choosing a couple of names out of that Dow 30 group, it's going to be really, really hard to jump up to 3,000 names or even more. So you might want to start by saying, hey, I'm new to investing, I'm new to trading, I'm only going to look at stocks in the Dow. You can do that incredibly easily by building that right into your scans. So to do that, you're just going to select Dow 30 Industrial from this menu. You're going to hit Add. And when we scroll back up, you see that actually puts that syntax right into this scan. Group is Dow 30. So the index that we're going to look at is Dow 30. Now from here, we could go down to a next line and we can put in any of the syntax that we want. So let's say we wanted to scan for new 52-week highs. We talked about that one. Well, there you go. We've selected that from the menu down below. We hit Add. Now, what we're going to be doing, we'll actually put these back together here, these two lines. What we're going to be scanning here is Dow stocks, the 30 Dow stocks, and we're going to be looking for any of those that are making a new 52-week high. So think about this. If you're running your investing process, your trading process, again, you're going to keep things really limited for yourself here by only looking at those 30 stocks in the Dow. That's going to shrink your investable landscape. Instead of having to worry about all the thousands and thousands of charts out there that might be making a breakout and might end up working, you're just going to stay focused on this group of 30. It's an incredible starting place for a new technician, a new trader, a new investor, even a seasoned strategist, to be honest. If you can't find success picking and choosing a couple of names out of the Dow, again, it's going to be even harder when you blow that group out to be thousands and thousands of options. So we can do this with anything. Let's blank out our criteria again. Let's go look at some of the other groups that are in there. Maybe you want to jump up to something like the S&P 500. Well, select that from the menu, hit add, and again, that's going to put that group is SP 500 right up in your scans. So you might want to say, okay, 30 is not enough for me. I want more options in there, but I want to stay focused just on the large caps. And to do that, I'm going to look only at the S&P 500. Again, a great way to kind of shrink your investable universe. If you can't find success trading the S&P 500, it's going to be even harder when you jump up to 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 symbols that you could possibly consider. So this is a fantastic way to kind of limit your investable landscape. Now I mentioned that I do this with the S&P 1500. So you can actually sort of build that into your scans by using this index menu and then customizing it just a little bit. So we'll open this up. We'll choose S&P 400. We're going to hit add, and we're going to choose S&P 600, and we're going to hit add. So the S&P 1500 is the combination of the 500, 400, and 600. So it brings in large caps, mid caps, and small caps all in one. Now, if we add this in here sort of as it is, it's going to put each one of those on its own line, and it's going to add in those next groups with the little and criteria at the start. This syntax, though, if you kind of just ignore the brackets for a second, I know it looks a little scary to some people, but just kind of read this line. It doesn't actually make any sense. Group is S&P 500 and S&P 400 and S&P 600. Well, that can't really exist, right? We can't have a stock that's in the S&P 500 as a large cap and the S&P 600 as a small cap. So what we are going to do is we're going to modify this just a little bit. We're going to come in here. We're going to say group is S&P 500 or group is S&P 400 or group is S&P 600. Now, to make this really work, there's one last thing that we have to do. Because we've added in those ors, we need to wrap this whole thing in some brackets to keep it as one group. So when I do that, I actually like to put it on its own line. We're going to hit this down onto its own line. That's our first bracket, and then we're going to add in our last bracket down here. And to clean this up a little bit, we'll tab these over onto new lines. So we've got kind of just like when you were in high school, you know, and you were working on math and you had to wrap the whole thing in parentheses that you wanted to sort of keep as one group, doing the exact same thing with brackets here. So we've got a bracket, then we've got group is S&P 500 or S&P 400 or S&P 600. We've wrapped that whole thing in some brackets. Now, again, we can go down to our next line. We can select any of our criteria. Let's say we wanted new 52-week highs. We hit add for that. So now what we're going to be doing is looking at just stocks in the S&P 1500 making new 52-week highs. So again, this is a great way to limit your investable landscape. There are plenty of other stocks out there, but 1500 is a huge list to consider. It's enough options for you. If you're trading stocks, the S&P 1500, I would say, is a great place to start. So again, this is all about kind of keeping focused on a specific group, limiting that investable landscape, investable universe to something a bit more manageable. I mentioned that this is something I do in my own process, so you can actually see that right in my own scans. If I open this up, you can see there's a couple of scans right up at the top that say S&P 1500. We can come down here and look at all of the other ones that say S&P 1500 as well. So I like to scan for new highs across different time frames. We've talked about that on the show in the past. So for instance, S&P 1500 stocks making new 9-month highs. You can see exactly what we just built. Looks a tiny bit different, but pretty much the same thing. Type is stock, group is S&P 500 or 400 or 600. They're wrapped in those brackets there. And here we've got our scan syntax. It is making a new 9-month high, and it's actually below a 52-week high because I've got these lists running kind of at multiple times. So I don't want to keep things in multiple lists. So you can see that this is exactly what I do. For me as a stock trader, as a stock investor, I find that working just out of the S&P 1500 makes things a lot more manageable for me. Again, it's all about sort of controlling emotion, not letting choice overload me, not letting the markets overwhelm me. I find that keeping a little bit more focused on a smaller group makes things a lot more manageable for me. Now, there are always going to be stocks out there, charts out there that are outside of this group that look really, really tempting. Some crazy new, in 2020, it was some crazy new SPAC that looked amazingly tempting. But there's a beautiful sort of side to trading just a group that you know. Knowing that you're staying focused on the S&P 500 or the Dow 30, the S&P 1500, the NASDAQ 100. You get to define what that group is. But again, staying focused on a specific group makes the markets a lot more manageable for you. And this is exactly how you can actually start to build that into your process. You can actually build that directly into your scans. So I mentioned there's one other way to do this, what I call a universe list. So let's actually pull this up here. We'll show you the scan. If I scroll up this list a little bit, you can see that I have some scans in my account called ETFs. I've got ETFs making new 3-month highs, 52-week highs, 6-month highs, 9-month highs. There's one up at the top, I believe, for all-time highs as well. So I like to also buy ETFs in addition to stocks. I'm primarily trading stocks, but for some of my longer-term positions, I'll look at weekly charts, and I'm trying to buy some ETFs that are setting up nicely on those weekly charts. So for those ETFs, what I've done is created my own universe, my own ETF universe. You can actually see in here, there's a scan called ETF Universe Builder, and that's a topic for another show. But the simple concept, what I've done is taken a chart list. I've put all of the ETFs that I want to consider as my universe, basically the S&P 1500 of ETFs, if you want to sort of think about it that way. I've taken all those ETFs, and over time, I've saved them into this one chart list in my account that I call my ETF universe. I can then build that into my scans. So just like we're doing here, where we're scanning just the S&P 500, 400, and 600, I can set up my ETF scans so that they just scan the components of that chart list. Let's look at how this looks in sort of practice. We'll jump over to, for instance, the ETFs making new 52-week highs. You can see we've got our syntax here for new 52-week highs. I'll move that down a line so you can see it. That's our scan syntax for those new 52-week highs. But at the top, instead of having group is SP 500 or something like that, what we have is favorites list, which is sort of our back-end naming for chart lists. This means the chart list number is 132. And as you can see, the name of that chart list is ETF Universe. So I'm actually scanning, in this case, all the components that have been saved into this specific chart list that I've set up in my account. It's very, very easy to do this. I'll show you exactly how we can build this scan from scratch. Let's hit new. We'll blank this out. We're going to come down here to that scan components area. And again, we're going to open up that chart lists menu this time. We're going to scroll through our chart lists, and I'm going to run down to the ETF universe list. You might not be able to see that on your screen, but I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select ETF universe from that menu. You can see there's our list number 132. We're going to hit add, and just like we did before, it's going to add that syntax right to the top of this scan. So that means we're only going to be scanning the things that are saved into this list. From there, again, we can add any of our scan syntax that we want. So if we wanted to do new 52-week highs, we come down here, add that in right there. Now we're looking at ETFs in this list making new 52-week highs. So it's the same concept, but in this case, we're sort of customizing what that universe is going to be. Now, you could do this with stocks, you could do this with commodities, you could do this with cryptocurrencies, you could do this with anything that you are interested in building up a universe for. Maybe you want to do it across asset classes. You can build up those chart lists and then set your scans to specifically look at only the things that are saved into that chart list or a group of chart lists. So you could do the exact same thing. Let's say we wanted to do 2 chart lists. We'll just, for the sake of demonstration here, we'll select 2 chart lists from my account. Let's say we only wanted to scan things that are in these 2 chart lists. We're going to use that exact same trick that we did before. We're going to move that down to its own line. We're going to add in a bracket right there. We're going to say favorites list is 91 or favorites list is 129. We're going to move that down, add our last bracket. I'll move that over. So now we would actually be looking at only the things that are saved into 2 chart lists. So you can do this, actually build up a couple of these different universe lists, and then set up your scans to look only at the things that are in there. This is a great way to sort of customize, again, what your investable landscape is. So if you wanted to add in more things, maybe you don't want to do the S&P 1500, you want to sort of customize what it is, or maybe you want to add in a couple of different groups, throw things in there, throw different asset classes in there, however you want to set it up. If you're sort of a more advanced investor, more advanced trader, you can actually create sort of your own investable universe. And again, use chart lists to build that right into your scans. Create those chart lists off in your account, fill them up with all the stocks you would, or all the symbols that you would ever want to consider, and then build those right into your scans, just the way that we did with those groups with the S&P 1500. So that is our show for today, digging into a little bit of a process discussion, showing you how to use scans and some of those tips and tricks that we have built in down there with the scan components area to actually build up your own investable universe. Again, I mentioned this at the start of the show. This is a soapbox that I've been up on many, many times. People think that they need to consider everything out there, but the reality is the modern markets are huge, especially when you add in ETFs and then you add in inverse and leveraged ETFs, you add in cryptocurrencies, you add in all of the different country funds, and you add in Forex pairs. The investable landscape across the globe that we now have access to as modern online investors, it is just immense. And it doesn't necessarily make us better off. It's great to have that choice because it means that you can define what's right for you. You can pick the asset classes that really make sense for your style, your time frame, all of that. But if you try to consider it all, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. Choice overload is real. Go look that up. Remember, look up that book, Paradox of Choice. If you pick up a copy of that, I guarantee you are going to enjoy it. It's by a guy named Barry Schwartz, again, a former professor of mine, but an amazing behavioral psychologist. Barry wrote this book, The Paradox of Choice. And like I said, it really is one of my favorite investing books, even though it's not even a true investing book. But learn about the paradox of choice, learn about choice overload, some of these sort of behavioral finance topics, cognitive biases, and things like that. We actually have an amazing article on StockCharts right in Chart School that talks about different cognitive biases that we all suffer from as investors. Things like the endowment effect. We have a higher sort of appreciation for things that we own simply because we own them. If you buy a stock, you're going to love that stock simply because you bought that stock. Things like loss aversion. We are very, very scared of loss. So once we see a loss on a new trade or something like that, we start to think, oh, nope, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to touch it. I'm just not going to worry about it. That loss continues to grow and grow and grow, but we are averse to ever taking that loss or realizing that loss. There are all of these different cognitive biases out there that affect us as traders and investors. And the way to deal with them is to learn about them, to be aware of them, and to recognize them in ourselves when we commit those sort of cognitive biases or cognitive errors, if you will. It's just human nature. We all do them, but as long as you are aware that they are happening, you can actually fight back against some of those. So down in the description below, we'll put a link to that cognitive biases article. I think you will really, really enjoy it. Maybe we'll put a link to that Paradox of Choice book as well, just so you can find that. I think you'll really enjoy that one. But that's our show today, digging into sort of that concept and showing you how to actually limit your investable universe to just a smaller group of names. Whether it's something really, really small like the Dow 30, something a little bit bigger like the S&P 500, or something totally custom like the S&P 1500, or your own universe list that you get to create. Again, you can use ChartList to actually fill that up, sort of define the broad set of things that you might want to consider, and then set your scans up to only look at those specific chart lists. It's a great way to create your own investable universe, as I like to call it. So I want to thank you for joining me on the show today. Always fun to talk process, sort of blend process and trading and investing ideas with the site. It's not just about, hey, click this button to do this. It's really about, hey, if this is what you're trying to accomplish, this is how you can use StockCharts to do it. Again, this show is all about digging into the tools and the features, but ultimately it's about giving you more value out of StockCharts, helping you find that value out of those tools and features around the site. So shows like this one hopefully help you do that. It's always fun topics to cover when we get to talk philosophically about trading and investing. Again, my name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. It's been great to be with you. I'll see you again soon for another episode of StockCharts in Focus. But until then, chart on, my friends.
Hey, Grayson Roze here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.